Today we're going to be doing a battery drain test between the new iPhone 13 mini and last year's iPhone 12 mini. And the clock starts now. As we start off while watching some YouTube videos, I want to tell you all what I did to make this test as fair as possible. I matched all settings between the two phones, including Bluetooth turned off, Wi-Fi turned on, and location services turned off. Both phones have 100% battery health, and they were set up from the same iOS backup. And since the 13 mini has a brighter display than the 12 mini, I had to make sure the brightness was the same and check the exposure on my camera using zebras. I found that 80% on the 12 mini matched perfectly with 76% on the 13 mini. And after about 1 hour of YouTube videos, the 12 mini was at 97%, while the 13 mini was at 98%. Now let's move on to running some Geekbench benchmarks. This is great not only for draining the battery, but we also get to see how the new A15 Bionic on the 13 compares to last year's A14 Bionic on the 12. The 13 mini showed about an 8% improvement in single core performance and about 15% improvement in multi-core. You probably wouldn't notice a difference in daily use between these two phones, but it's still nice to see this incremental upgrade from year to year. Anyways, after 30 minutes and a few benchmark runs, the 12 dropped to 86% and the 13 was at 89%. Jumping into some gaming with Temple Run, I want to explain why this battery test matters in the first place. So I've been using the iPhone 12 mini as my main phone since it came out last year, and I really do like it, but I find it hard to recommend to people just because of its battery life. While I love its smaller form factor, it just has less battery life than other smartphones, and it'll oftentimes die before reaching the end of the day. So when Apple claimed 15% better battery life on the 13 mini, I knew I had to test this out for myself and see if it's really that much better. Can I actually start recommending the 13 mini to people who like smaller phones? Well, you can see that rolling into the 3-hour mark, the iPhone 12 mini is at about 70%, and the 13 mini is starting to lengthen its lead at about 75%. Now, at this point in the test, I start to realize that it's gonna take a lot longer than I was expecting, and to speed things up, I started the first HD video test. Not 4K video, that's gonna come later, but even recording 1080p footage still will take a big hit on the battery life. It drained about 11% on the 12 mini and 10% on the 13 mini in just 30 minutes. So we crossed the halfway point on both phones during an hour of gaming before getting into 30 minutes of 4K video recording, which drained 14% from the 12 mini and 12% from the 13 in 30 minutes. Clearly, recording 4K video is about the most battery intensive task you can do on an iPhone. Then we take an hour to view some reels on Instagram and hop back over to YouTube before another 30 minutes of 4K video recording. And coming around 7 hours, the 12 mini is down to just 5% battery life, while the 13 mini is still going strong at 17%. Now, I want to briefly explain why we're seeing better battery life in the new iPhone 13 lineup, and it basically comes down to two main factors. So teardowns actually revealed that at least on the mini, the 13 has about 8% more milliamp hours than the 12 mini. So that's a nice little increase. It's why the 13 mini is just a hair thicker than the 12 mini, but the rest of the improvement just comes from better efficiency in the A15 Bionic. It can just handle more tasks with less power consumption. This is something that all smartphone manufacturers are constantly trying to improve in their chipsets, and it's really impressive to see such a big jump in just 1 year on the iPhone. But going back to the battery test, we do a final 30 minutes of watching some YouTube videos, switch back over to 4K video recording, and the 12 mini died a few minutes in, while the 13 mini made it just past the 8-hour mark. So the final results, we have the 12 mini lasting about 7 hours 35 minutes, and the 13 mini lasting just over 8 hours, so about 5.5% longer on the 13 mini. Now, the one thing I messed up on that I think makes these results seem not that impressive is how I ended the test with 4K video recording, which was the most battery intensive task of the entire test. It kind of skews the results and makes the 13 mini look worse than it normally would be. So if, for example, I had ended off the test with social media rather than recording 4K video, if I use the average drain rates from earlier in the test, we probably would have seen the 12 mini last about 7 hours and 43 minutes, and the 13 mini last way longer. It probably would have been closer to 9 hours. And if we use those estimates, we would see that the 13 mini would have fared about 16% better than the 12 mini, which is right in line with Apple's estimates. So in conclusion, Apple isn't exaggerating. The battery life on the 13 mini is significantly better than the 12 mini. Now, if you take what we learned from this test and apply it to more real-world use cases, you should see this translate into about 1 to 1.5 hours more screen on time for the 13 mini, which is such good news for iPhone users who prefer these smaller phones. And I finally feel like I can actually recommend the 13 mini to people without giving them all these warnings about the battery life. Anyways, if you like this video, thumbs up are always appreciated. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.